Today we have Adrian Hon from Mind Candy, and Mind Candy are the makers of Perplex City, which I don't think most of you have at least heard of. And he's going to talk a little bit about, oh, by the way, we have starter kits, 2 starter kits left from season 1. So if you've never played it, or if you just want free stuff, feel free to help yourself. And so season 1 has just ended. Adrian's going to talk a little bit about how they developed and ran season 1 and what they're going to be doing different and they believe better in season 2. So Adrian Hon.
Thanks, Curtis. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'll give a brief introduction about what alternate reality games are. I presume a lot of you guys have heard about it, but in case you haven't, I'll introduce them. Then what I want to do is talk about the making of season 1 of Perplex City, what sort of thought processes went into the planning of season 1 and how it panned out and what worked and what didn't work. And then I want to talk about what we're doing in the future with Perplex City in season 2. So a good place to start is asking, why are alternate reality games interesting? More interesting than other types of games. I think it's basically because of the interface of ARGs. So if you look at sort of the history of video games, you can see that controllers or joysticks or gamepads sort of get progressively more and more complicated. You start out with with Pong, you've basically got a paddle and a dial. And then you've got the NES controller, then the Super Nintendo, then the GameCube, then the PlayStation 2 controller. And now the PlayStation 3 controller's got 15 buttons and 2 joysticks. If you've grown up with video games, it's perfectly obvious how you play these games. But if you haven't, then it just looks like a piece of alien technology, and you don't know how to use it. And so lately, obviously, with there being games which are sort of going in the other direction. So some of the best games recently use different sorts of controllers. So this is SingStar here, and basically, you have a microphone, that's a controller, and in the game you play karaoke, basically. And in Guitar Hero, you basically play along using a toy guitar. And the interesting thing with these games is that you don't really have to learn how to use these controls. You already know how to sing into a microphone and how you're supposed to play guitar, at least. It's a very natural control scheme. And alternate reality games, when you boil them down, they're basically adventure games played out on the fabric of the internet. And they also use tools that we already know how to use. So what you do, basically, in an alternate reality game is, say you had a detective mystery. If you want to go and email a suspect, then you just fire up Hotmail or Google Mail. And everyone knows how to use Hotmail. If you want to search about a company or about an individual, you don't have to use a specialized interface. You just go to Google and you type in the company name and you'll find a website, and that's how you find out. And if you want to speak to a character, you just fire up Skype or use your mobile phone and just call them using these tools and using these services that you already know how to use because you use them every day. And this sort of tends to be true of all alternate reality games. And that's why a lot of people find them very interesting. It's not that you pretend that the entire story is real. It's just that it feels very real because you're using the interfaces and the services that you use every day. So alternate reality games started about 6 years ago. And traditionally, their cost is about an order of magnitude less than traditional console or PC games. So instead of being a few $1 million to make, it's a few $100,000 to make. And that's mainly because of things like distribution and content creation and the fact that you don't need expensive 3D graphics or AI or stuff like that. But it's still not really that cheap. And lately, the big question is, how do you actually pay for alternate reality games? As designers, we love making these games, but how do we keep on making them? And it's an important question because how you pay for them really influences the design of the game. And that's almost the first question that came up when we started making Perplex City. And there are kind of 3 big ways you can do it. Firstly, there's sponsorship. And this is how most alternate reality games get their funding. And what they do is they get sponsored by people like Coke or Microsoft or movie companies to produce games that are marketing for movies, or like AI, or like Minority Report, or TV shows like Lost or Heroes, or video games like Halo. And these have been pretty popular. Marketing and sponsorship has worked pretty well so far because alternate reality games have always generated a really big buzz in the media. They get a lot of column inches, they get a lot of people talking about them, and they also reach people who don't normally get reached by traditional advertising through TV or magazines or things like that. A lot of people who play alternate reality games, they don't, they download everything using BitTorrent and they don't watch TV anymore. So alternate reality games can really reach them. And also, one of the other reasons why sponsorship is quite good is because alternate reality games allow advertisers to get people to interact with their products directly. So say you had a mobile phone company that wanted to make an ARG, you could, as part of the game, have people learn about your product or even use GPS on the mobile phone or whatever. But the problem for us was that we didn't actually just want to make ads in Perplex City. We wanted to control our own IP, and we wanted to tell an ongoing story, and hopefully make more money than you can get just using sponsorship. So we decided not to go down that route. Then the second route is subscription. And basically, what these games have done, most notably Majestic, is that you pay something like $10 or $15, like World of Warcraft, and you get a certain amount of content every month. And this really was disastrous for Majestic. Electronic Arts made Majestic. They put $10 million behind it, and they lost most of their money. And there are a lot of reasons why that happened, I think, partly because of the game design, partly because of the sponsorship, partly because it was an idea before its time, but it didn't seem like people wanted to pay to play an alternate reality game. It just didn't seem like the right time. And it might work later, and we might try this ourselves, but we don't know. This is not a route we wanted to go with. It seemed very risky. So the third route is basically, it's kind of a modification of sponsorship. It's basically marketing your own intellectual property. And this is what we did. And what I mean by this is making an alternate reality game that ties in to a product that you sell yourself. So in our case, which I'm going to talk about in a second, we sold these puzzle cards at retail, and the alternate reality game tied into the puzzle cards. So that's kind of how we funded it. And another company, 42, has released a book, like a teenager's book called Kathy's Book, and that ties into an alternate reality game. And it's not that the book funds the alternate reality game, it's that they're quite sort of tightly entwined. So that's another model, and that's what we wanted to do. So we make money at the moment by selling these puzzle cards. And you can buy them in packs of 6, and they cost about $4 each. And each card has a unique puzzle on them. And they range from very, very easy, like riddles or Sudoku or things like that, to extremely hard. These are the extremely hard puzzles here. And we kind of rode the wave of puzzle mania in the UK and in the US, so it was a good time for us to launch. And we sell these at places like Amazon and Borders and so on. And on the back of these cards is a map of Perplex City. So this is how we sort of introduced the world of Perplex City. We didn't want to just make puzzle cards, we wanted to make this new world. And so if you sort of piece together all these cards, you get a big map of Perplex City. So I want to sort of go into a bit more detail about these cards. So each card has a card number. There are 256 cards, so you've got the number there. Then below the card number, there's this unique ID. So you kind of scratch off this silver panel here at the top, and then you get an ID that is unique to this particular card. And what this means is that when you've figured out the answer to the puzzle, then you go to a website, you type in a number, and that tells us you've actually bought the card instead of just downloaded it from the internet or something like that. You've also got the difficulty, represented by the color of the border, which a lot of players actually really like, knowing how long a puzzle is supposed to take to solve. So we've got the red puzzles, which are very easy. They're supposed to be solved in minutes. The silver puzzles, you know they're supposed to take hours or days or even years in some cases. And finally, a lot of cards have these things called rabbit holes. So in the case of this puzzle, it's an easy one. Basically, you have to figure out someone's phone number based on a puzzle. And a lot of people, when they get the answer, they just type it into a website, they get the points, and they leave it at that. But if you call the phone number, well, it's a real phone number, and you get a message. And the message tells you, well, I can't answer the phone at the moment, but if you want to find out more about me, you can go to my weblog at quirkyacuity.com. And then, so you go to her weblog, which also exists, and you can find out more about her. And her weblog links to other sites, and it also gets updated in real time. So if you come back in a week's time, it'll have changed. And you can email this person, you can email all the other people on these different websites. So it's sort of like a living world. And a lot of people kind of fall down these rabbit holes, just like Alice, and enter the world of Perplex City. And the point of this world is, in Season 1, was a treasure hunt, if you boil it down really basically. The world of Perplex City had a great treasure stolen from them, and someone had put it somewhere on Earth, and if you found it, you would win $200,000. And someone found it about a month ago. So that was the end of Season 1. But anyway, these puzzle cards lead into the deeper world of Perplex City. And over the 2 years that we ran, we had about, well, over 30 different websites, which are all completely free to access, actually. You didn't have to buy any of these cards to play the alternate reality game. It's kind of marketing for us. And the websites range from weblogs. These are good ways for us to tell stories because of the way they update quite often. Newspapers. So this is the Perplex City Sentinel, and we updated this twice a week, and it had news of things that happened in Perplex City. And through these websites and these cards, we created the idea of a world, a place that is obsessed with puzzles and ciphers. What Perplex City values most is intelligence and the creation and solving of puzzles. And we did this for two reasons. One is that this is kind of like a higher goal of Perplex City. We wanted to make being smart cool, and we wanted to make puzzles cool. And this is something that we'd really like to achieve. But another reason why we did it is because we wanted an excuse to put a lot of puzzles in the game. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense for most stories to have a lot of puzzles. But if you've got a world that's obsessed with puzzles, then, well, you can put them in anywhere. So that worked out well for us. And we have a lot of fake websites, I guess you call them. And this is one of the websites called Cognivia. And this is for a fictional drug company that makes smart drugs. So you take a pill and it makes your memories better, or makes your reaction times faster, or makes your IQ go up by 10% or whatever. And they make these smart drugs in a pill form called Serotin. And we try and make these sites as realistic as possible, because a lot of players like the feeling of authenticity. They like it that it feels real. But sometimes it actually has its downsides, making it very realistic. A couple of weeks ago, we were planning a big party to celebrate the end of Season 1 and the fact that someone had found the cube. And we decided that we're going to do this fun thing. We're going to buy some M&Ms and print Serotin on one side of the M&M. And you can just go to M&M's website. You can type in whatever you want, and they'll make them in a few days. But obviously, there's a screening filter on their website, because you can't just type in swear words or trademarked words. They won't let you do that. But we didn't anticipate any problems. Anyway, the next day, we got a phone call from M&M saying, well, we did a search for Serotin, and there's a website that sells these pills. You can't make these pills because they're trademarked, so sorry guys, you can't do it. So then we had to explain for about 10 minutes, this is not a real company. We made this up. This is just fictional. You don't really believe they have these smart drugs. So that was a lot of fun, basically. And it does happen occasionally. We also set up a fictional bookstore, and we had publishers trying to order books from it. So we get a good laugh out of that anyway. So anyway, that's basically, that's a look at season 1. And what I'm going to talk about now is how did we make season 1 of Perplex City. Well, anyway, Mind Candy basically was set up in early 2004, mid 2004, so about summer of 2004. And we spent about 9 months, so from here to there, planning, creating all the puzzle cards, creating half of the puzzle cards, and planning the story. And the first thing to say is that the whole game took over twice as long as we expected. Because the cards were very difficult to print, these are non-standard size. Magic cards and Pokemon cards are obviously a lot smaller. These are A6. These caused problems for our printers. Also, the fact that we had the unique IDs. Basically, hardly any cards have unique IDs. No one needs them, but we did. So these things really added a lot of time to the development process. So anyway, what happened was that we planned for a story that would be 9 months long, and it ended up being 21 months, which is a big, big increase. But anyway, when we started, we did have an outline story. We had a series of milestones that we knew had to happen in the story for things to make sense and for us to tell the story we wanted to. And despite the fact that it was a year longer than we expected, we adhered to the story pretty well, but we had to create a huge number of side plots and filler material. If you watch Lost, we did even more than that. But we tried very hard to make it all consistent, unlike those guys. So anyway, so this brings us to the question of how do we actually plan the story in detail, beyond just these milestones. So basically, the story was planned around a series of arcs, and this is kind of an internal term we use. And arcs are basically analogous to chapters in a novel. So a novel is one continuous story, and while you can't read different chapters in isolation, like episodes in a TV show, they do delineate specific and particular phases in the story. So that's how we did it. And over the 2 years, we had 13 different arcs that lasted anywhere from about 1 to 4 months. And the way we planned these arcs is that we thought of what we wanted to achieve in this particular time frame. What did we want the characters to learn? What did we want to reveal? How did we want the characters to change? And at the same time, we also thought in this particular arc, what sort of characters and story did we want to emphasize? Was this going to be a kind of a detective arc? Is it going to be a mystery arc? Is it going to be trying to find a fugitive, that sort of thing? And some arcs also varied in terms of gameplay. One of them basically was all about live events outside, all about sort of running around after helicopters or looking for posters or that sort of thing. Other ones are all very puzzle heavy. And the way we did it was using a lot of flowcharts, basically. We all mapped these out in advance using OmniGraffle on a Mac. And in the beginning, these arcs were sort of kind of complicated, and they were designed to have multiple plot strands and multiple requirements to move forward. You'd have to solve 3 different puzzles and in a particular order to go forward. And this was one of the early arcs. But as we went along, they became a lot more sort of linear and a lot more straightforward. Because, well, basically, we learned a lot, and we found that these ended up being a lot easier to play. So normally, when we were designing these arcs, we knew that, well, we had to have a certain number of new websites to reveal, because people like seeing new websites and new content. We had to have some sort of live events, because people, we have about 50,000 people playing. At these live events, we sort of focus the attention of all the players onto one specific moment and where they can all interact with the characters. And that's a lot of fun for them, but it's a lot of work for us. So we have to sort of space them out. But much of the story, anyway, was told via websites and weblogs. You can kind of see here that there is no branching in the story. There's a lot of kind of talk about user-generated content and user-generated stories and stuff like that, but basically we don't really believe in it at Mind Candy. We don't believe in giving players we don't want to make a choose-your-own-adventure novel, basically, where you can tell someone, should I go with Chad or John? We don't want to do that sort of thing. We think we're good storytellers, and basically we map out the story and we involve the players in that story. But having said that, we do sort of respond to what the players do. Sometimes the players, when they're sort of going through the story, they spot holes in it, or they like particular characters a lot more than we expected. And then we'll sort of respond to that, and we'll go and change the story according to that. So it's not so much player-directed as player-influenced story. Oh, it's gone in. Hello. Anyway, so yes, there is sometimes we'll change the story anyway. There were no breaks between the different arcs, the different chapters in the story. We're basically in production continuously for 2 years. And that meant that the websites and the writing and the web and Flash minigames had to go from spec to live in a matter of a few weeks. And this was kind of very seat of the pants. It meant that we didn't do any testing whatsoever, and this caused some problems for us, basically. Writing, of course, was also done in response to player feedback, and this would have to go from spec to live in a matter of days or hours. And coordinating this with multiple writers was really tricky, because most writers, good writers, are not used to turning around a story that quickly while also maintaining quality. This sort of thing takes time, and they're sort of not used to it. And as a result, what we've learned is that alternate reality games require very kind of different skill sets to other games. The programmers need to be able to move a lot faster, be able to mock up things a lot faster and prototype things a lot faster. And the writers have to also do the same. So it's more like working on something like Saturday Night Live or a soap opera. You always have to generate new stuff. That's a constant deadline. One of the things that our writers really did enjoy, however, was basically improvisational writing. When we have these live events, there is no script for the actors or for anyone like that. We kind of have to invent the story on the fly. And there is really no comparable form of fiction where a writer writes something and seconds later they can see the result, or seconds later they can see thousands of people saying, wow, that was amazing. It's like crack cocaine, basically, for these writers. They can't get enough of it. It's addictive. And they want to do it all the time. And it's just, we try and stop them. But it's a bit like playing an RPG, though, if any of you guys have done that. It's a bit like being Dungeon Master or that sort of thing, where you're having to react to the players and invent new storyline or plot line. And it's interesting, actually, because we had 3 writers being the voice of one person. And we use this thing called sub-ether edit on the Mac, where you can sort of write, you have 3 people writing at the same time on the same document. And I was watching them do this, and one person would be writing a sentence. The other person would be editing the sentence as it was being written, sort of correcting all the typos. Another person would be sort of going over, suggesting edits. And it's just, I've never seen anyone write a story like that before. And this sort of, the epitome of this was something called Vacader's Revenge, which is a live-action text adventure. The idea behind this was that this is basically a bit of a joke, really. We wanted to have a bit of fun, and we sort of came up with this idea that in Perplex City, they're so smart, they figured out how to do artificial intelligence. And their text adventures are run by artificial intelligences. So unlike in Zork or Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where you type puts pot on head and it'll say, I don't understand that. This will understand what you do. And of course, the way it was powered in reality was basically our writers writing responses in real time. And the players didn't realize this until a few minutes in, and they loved it. So the players would take turns at the steering wheel, and they'd watch the other players, and it was sort of great to watch, as well as play, mainly because of the writing. And it was a real fan favorite. And we upgraded it for the sequel. The first version was just text. We upgraded it so that there was basically a shared whiteboard, so people could draw on it. Some of the challenges was, go and draw a house or that sort of thing. And at the end, we had a boss battle where the players had to go and do quick fire drawing and stuff like that. So very surreal, anyway. Most of the stuff I've talked about so far is on the web. And there's a good reason for that. It's cheaper and it's a lot quicker to do. When you start throwing in text messages and phone calls and real-life events, the cost really begins to add up, especially with 50,000 players or more than that, around the world, of course. So far, alternate reality games do not directly generate revenue, so it's hard to justify spending all that money. But it's still great to do on occasion, to do these elements of the game that really go beyond the web and appear in newspapers or on billboards, or we ran some fake cinema trailers in Toronto, so things that really surprise you. And those are kind of a bit easier to justify because more people will see them. The other thing about live events and mobile phone calls and things like that is that even though only a few hundred people might go to a live event, we did one in San Francisco a few months ago, they provide a lot of vicarious pleasure for the people who weren't there. Because at this particular event, we had a couple of helicopters buzzing the players. And when people heard about that, they thought that sounds a lot of fun, even though they weren't there. So that's another kind of reason why we did that. Then there's other stuff that we realized that we could do for free. When you have a project that's very interesting, like Perplex City, a lot of people approached us to make stuff for them that they would distribute. So what I mean by this is that a couple of British newspapers heard about Perplex City, and they said, can you make us some puzzles for our newspaper? We'll give you a couple of pages, and you can put whatever you want in them. So we will put some puzzles in there. They get free puzzles. We get free advertising, basically. One of the more interesting things that we did was when the UK's biggest independent radio network contacted us, and they wanted to go and interview one of our characters live on air. So it's like the equivalent of interviewing Harry Potter from Hogwarts. So we got an actor, one of our writers, and they spoke to the interviewer, to a few million people around the UK. And I hear that people really enjoyed that show, although they didn't really understand what was going on, but they did enjoy it. We didn't really push the multi-platform stuff in Season 1 as much as we wanted to, mainly because it was expensive. And it was also technically quite difficult to do, and hard in story terms. Alternate reality games are very rarely personalized. They treat their entire play base as if it was just one person. And you kind of have to do that for story purposes. Because if you only have one story, then you can't have 50,000 people making different decisions and trying to pull the story in different directions. You have to treat them as one big blob. But an interesting byproduct of the lack of the personalization in Perplex City and in other alternate reality games is that you produce a very strong community. They're all watching the same, story at the same time, and they're all helping out together. It's far stronger than a soap opera, that sort of thing. Because we actually force people in Perplex City to work together. And there's some puzzles and some challenges that cannot be solved by one person. They require dozens or hundreds or even thousands of people working together, and that really pulls a community together. So I'm going to go through a few few slides about about some of the things that the community did. And one of the things is a wiki. Now this is not as novel as it used to be, but on the wiki, they made an encyclopedia about the game with every sort of piece of information in the story. So it's got 1,000 editors. You know, it's a reasonably big wiki for something like this. But the interesting thing is they put up content so fast, and they put it up in so much detail that it's better than our own internal resources. You know, if the wiki goes down, we're in trouble because we can't remember what we actually did. So they save us a lot of time making this thing. Also, they did a Google Maps mashup of all the maps. They scanned in the backs of the cards, and they put them together, and they labeled them so that it's got all these different sort of searchable points on it. And again, this is better than anything we have internally, so we use this as well. Except it's kind of slow, so it gets kind of frustrating. And you know, it's fully searchable, 600 locations. It's really nice thing that they did. This is an example of one of the really hard puzzles that we made for them. We made a card called the 13th Labor, and it's basically an RC5 encrypted message. And when they got the card, they thought, oh, you know, what's this about? Are we really supposed to crack this? Because if so, this would take ages. Take, you know, thousands of years for one computer to do it. And after a little while, they realized, well, this is how we're supposed to do it. So they went and wrote a distributed computing client. And about several thousand people got together to, well, over 1,000 people got together to try and crack this puzzle. And they're still working at it. So far, 1,600 clients. It's probably 4 million hours now, actually. They made a mistake when they did it the first time round, so they have to do it again now. But they're still going strong, so that's really cool. And there's also, I talked a bit about user-generated content before, and the fact that, you know, in most cases we don't like it, but sometimes it works out really well. There was a particular part in the story where we had a character, and she had to get inside a library to retrieve a rare manuscript. And she could only get in a library if she was a published author or she was a proper researcher. So a lot of the players got together and they were thinking, well, how are we going to get in? Are we going to hack in? Are we going to try and do some social engineering? How are we going to convince, you know, these people to let her in? And a group of players thought, well, if all it takes to get her in is for her to become a published author, why don't we just go and write a book for her, publish it, and put it in her name? So in the space of about 2 weeks, they went and wrote a book and published it on Lulu, and you can buy it. It's, the writing reads like it was done in 2 weeks, but it's got a really nice cover, and they had a lot of fun doing it. And in fact, the entire community had a lot of fun, you know, being involved in it, and that was a real moment for the community when they realized that they could actually do something like that, and that this was part of a game. Writing a book is part of a game, and that's how you can solve a challenge. And there are other sort of cases where we incorporate user-generated content, like people can write into our newspaper and that sort of thing, but this is one of the most interesting things. So anyway, the demographics for, I'm going to go into a bunch of statistics now. The average age is 26. It's quite broad. There's a big peak here because technically you're not allowed to play unless you're over 13. So, but you know, it is actually a family-friendly game. We don't really do a lot of swearing. And there's a 50-50 gender split, as far as we can tell, which is unusual for this sort of thing, for online games or for video games. And a lot of theories about this. You know, I think it's because of the story, and I think it's because of the way you interact with the game. It's not a Twitch-based game. It requires a lot of thought and speculation and, you know, a lot of social interaction. Demographics, geographical split. This has changed a bit, actually. I think there are probably more players in the United States than in the UK at the moment. But basically, we're talking about the English-speaking world plus the usual suspects like Germany and France and Japan. The global nature of the game is difficult for us because we're based in the UK, and if we're going to do online live events, we have to make sure that pretty much everyone's awake, which means that we have to do the games quite late in the evening, so that the West Coast, 8 hours behind, is still up. And we've also had to hold live events around the world. So we've done them in New York and London and San Francisco. But it's tough for us to do because we've got about 20 people in the company, 25 people in the company, and only about 6 of those really work on the ARG full time. You're doing the writing, so it's a real strain. Statistics: 55,000 registered users, 850,000 cards sold, blah blah blah. Some of the more interesting things: about 500,000 words of story have been written over the 2 years. That's about well over 5 books. 15,000 emails sent into in-game characters by the players, which is quite fun. Anyway, that's season 1. And that took about 2 years to go from start to finish. And we had a lot of fun doing it, and I think a lot of people enjoyed playing it. But it was, towards the end, it was a bit of a frustrating experience for us because we kind of just wanted it to finish. Because we were a bit tired, but also because we couldn't finish the game until the treasure got found. And that was kind of, you can't really force that. And towards the end, we're realizing there's some real problems with the design of the game. And we wanted to fix them, but we couldn't do it halfway through season 1. So now that season 1 is over, we've started thinking a lot about what we want to change. So here's kind of a list of things we wanted to change. Firstly, here are basically the thoughts that people had at the end of season 1. The players thought it was hard to understand the concept of alternate reality games. How do you play an alternate reality game? And what have the cards got to do with it? Do I need to buy these cards? Are there clues on these cards? Is there a story in these cards? How does it work? And it was also hard to start playing and continue playing. Because the story was live and it lasted for 2 years, unless you began playing at the start of the game, or you spent a lot of time reading up on what happened before, it was quite difficult to actually join halfway through and know what was going on and be able to contribute a lot. We tried a lot to make it easy for people to join using things like Story So Far and walkthroughs and stuff, but there's only so much you can do. And it's a bit like trying to join Lost now without being able to watch the previous episodes. It's basically very difficult to do. I mean, you can watch individual episodes and you might get a bit of entertainment out of it, but it's hard to see what's going on. And it's also hard to continue playing. Say you take a holiday for 2 months or a month or a few weeks or whatever, you come back, it's difficult to catch up. So those are the things we wanted to address. From our point of view as developers, making a game for 2 years continuously, it's very difficult. We don't want to do that again because people have nervous breakdowns and stuff like that. And that's expensive. Doing one continuous long story for 2 years means you can't get a good variety. It's hard to sort of change the mode of gameplay. It's hard to change the stories that you can tell. And also, we didn't really use the multi-platform features of ARGs as much as we wanted to. We wanted to do more phone calls, more text messages, more things that bring you out from in front of your computer. And basically, there were 3 solutions that we came up with. Firstly, we wanted to make the game episodic. So this is what we're doing with season 2. Sorry, we're going to make the game episodic. So instead of having one long 2-year story, we're having episodes that will last for about 2 weeks to 2 months, but more like 2 weeks to 4 weeks or so on. And that's a lot easier for players to follow. It allows us to plan a lot better, around sort of discrete chunks of story, and allows us to vary the gameplay and vary the stories a lot more. The second thing we want to do with Season 2 is make it a lot more personalized. We want to try and tailor things towards the individual. This obviously doesn't work in live episodes for the reason I mentioned before, because you can't have 50,000 stories going on at the same time. So what we're doing with the third feature of Season 2 is making many of the episodes replayable. So basically, this is a real innovation of Season 2, beyond episodic and personalization. And it requires sort of killing off one of the sacred cows of alternate reality games. And that is that games should always be as real as possible. And if you make a replayable game and admit that it's a game, then obviously it's not as real as it used to be. But personally, I think that's kind of a bit overrated, really. Making this sort of very convincing hoax is not the reason why people play the game. People play it because they enjoy the story. And a good example is Lonely Girl. So Lonely Girl, when it first launched, got millions and millions of views. Mainly because, I think, a lot of people are wondering, is this real? Is there really a girl in California or wherever whose parents are Satanists? And, is this real? We want to go and find out, who she is and who's making this thing. So that was kind of entertaining as a game, basically. But if you look at it now, Lonely Girl is still actually running on Rever. And most episodes of the video that they put out get about 10,000 to 20,000 views, which is really not a lot, actually. And the reason for that is because the most important thing about making these games is having a good story. And making it realistic is not really the most important thing. So anyway, that's why we're going with replayable. Another reason is because by doing a live game that you can't replay, you're wasting huge amounts of content. That 50,000 words, 500,000 words that we've written, it's kind of almost gone. You can't really play through it again, and that's a real shame for us. So people have actually tried doing replayable games before. Majestic was kind of replayable, and so was a game by the BBC called Jamie Kane. And they didn't really work that well, actually. And we studied them quite closely to figure out why these replayable alternate reality games didn't work very well. And we came up with two reasons. Firstly, it was too hard to start playing these games. It's hard to start playing Perplex City, but it was also quite difficult to start playing these games. You had to click through about 7 pages of explanation and sign up to actually start playing. And by that time, you've kind of given up. And we've decided with Perplex City, when you start playing, you're only going to have to spend 10 seconds signing up and only 1 click, and then you're going to start playing the game. So we don't want to kind of spend a lot of time explaining to people what an alternate reality game is. We just want to get them playing. The second reason, which is really weird, is that replayable alternate reality games have always limited the amount of time you can actually play per day. So if you played Majestic or played this BBC game, you're only allowed to play 30 minutes a day. You couldn't go beyond that. So if you happen to have like an evening free and you wanted to go through the entire story, you couldn't. It just stopped you on that day, which is just really weird. If you're really into a story, you don't want it to stop. You don't care if it's not realistic. You just want to keep on playing. And I think people, on the internet, they're not used to this sort of behavior. They want content now and they want to keep on playing it, even if it's not realistic. So in our game, we've decided, even though the game story might take place over 4 days, we're going to let you play those 4 days in the space of 4 hours or 4 months, whatever way you want. So, so that's basically those 4 things. So Season 2 is something that we've been thinking about for the last 6 months. And what we think is that it will solve the problem that we have with Season 1, where a lot of people would come up to us and say, Perplex City, that sounds really cool, but it was too difficult to get into, and it was too difficult to start playing, and I don't have enough time. People say this about a lot of games. I don't have enough time to play World of Warcraft, that sort of thing. What we want to do is create a new type of story that can really affect people and really reach them in different ways. So instead of just being on a printed page on the screen, it's something that you can interact with using all the tools that you use every day. People growing up today, they don't just read books or watch TV or go on the internet in isolation. They're doing all these things at the same time. They're doing IM. I'm sure, in fact, this is the case for all of you, actually. You're doing IM, you've got your laptop open, you've got the TV on, you've got the radio on, all these different things. What we want to do is make a game that binds together all these different media and uses each platform's strength as part of the game. And I think with Season 2, well, we've got some good ideas. It's going to launch in April. This is the first time we've actually talked in detail about what we're doing in Season 2. We're basically going to, the first episode is going to launch in April. And, well, we're going to see what happens. I don't know how it'll go, but it's basically going to be exciting to see. So thank you, and if you want to learn any more, then I'm going to be here, happy to take questions, and there are more resources available online, and we also have a bunch of stuff to give away, and we've got those M&Ms that have the seraphim on, so you can eat these trademarked things.
Quick question. So the season 1 ended, but you mentioned that there's these people still trying to crack that code. Is that just for personal satisfaction, or why are they still at it?
I think that's just for personal satisfaction. It didn't even have anything to do with the story. All you get is some points that don't get you anything. I think you set up these challenges and people just enjoy doing them. There are 2 other cards that are really difficult that haven't been solved. One is a Riemann hypothesis, which we put on a card as a joke, because we could say there's a $1 million prize. The other card was this thing called Billion to One. And basically it had this guy's face on it, and it had some Japanese writing down the side, and it said, "Find me." So that's all you have. And this is one person in 6 billion people, and the point of the card is to go and find this person. So it's kind of a practical, experiment in 6 degrees of separation. And they've been going at it for 2 years. They know it's got nothing to do with the story. We told them this. It's just a game. And they've been on ABC News. They've been on all these different places, trying to, holding up this guy's photo. We took a photo of him actually in this place in France, and it basically he's Japanese. But he was in this place in France, and within about a few months, they located this place in France, and I couldn't believe it. It's just this nondescript, location, and they sort of compared these different photos, and they found it. So I don't know whether they'll find this guy. Maybe he's going to grow old, and they won't, be able to figure it out or something. But when they do, I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm curious what you've learned about your players. Are they like hardcore, or are they both hands at ARGs? Do they play B's to LBs? Do they play console games, casual games, no other games?
They're a real mix, basically. Most of our players had not played alternate reality games before because they were drawn into it through the puzzle cards. A lot of the people who played the first alternate reality games like the Beast and like I Love Bees, a lot of them didn't start playing Perplex City because firstly it was made in the UK and we weren't able to sort of cater to the US audience as they were used to. And also, we were one of the first games to offer a big prize and to sell stuff. And I think a lot of people didn't like that. Now, most people don't really care about it now, and it's fine. But the hardcore ARG audience is very demanding, I think. And that's good, because they demand that you make good games. But the people who we have playing, they range from 13-year-old people who love the puzzles to 60-year-old grandmothers who love the fact that they can interact with the story, and they've learned a lot how to use these. They can play with their kids. When we did an event in San Francisco a few months ago, it was really fascinating because I saw this family of 3 generations: the kids, the parents, and the grandparents, all working together. And I don't know many games where people really do that. Maybe the Nintendo Wii, maybe when you go out to watch a sports game, but other than that, I'm not so sure. So that was a really interesting thing for us.
How did the longer than expected runtime interact with your business model and the high barrier to entry? It seems that if you find your revenue around the set of cards and the game winds up running over twice as long as you're going, once you put on the set of cards, you stop getting money from that player if you're not getting in new players because there's so much backstory.
Yeah, it didn't work out so well. But we got a lot of funding, so that's good. It was an experiment, I think, and the main reason the sort of two main reasons was because the cards took so long to print and they're difficult to make, and also that we underestimated the difficulty of making the content on the cards. You know, making 256 really good puzzles and doing the artwork for them, that's not easy. And making them tie together, and also the tech backend. You know, having to coordinate all these different things together. So anyway, with season 2, actually, we have a kind of we're separating the cards and the alternate reality game. Before, they're very closely entwined, and sort of new parts of the alternate reality game would start when a new wave of cards was released, and we're not doing that anymore. The cards are their own entity, and they kind of fund themselves. The alternate reality game, what we are looking at is sponsorship of different episodes, so we're kind of coming back to that now, but it's within the world of Perplex City. And we're also looking at, well, you know, I think if we get the numbers up, something like pay for play. Half-Life 2 is selling episodes of content. Sam and Max are selling episodes of content. You know, people are getting used to the idea of buying episodes of stuff off the internet. You know, like movies and like TV shows. I'd love to see the numbers on those things, because I don't know whether they're making any money or not. But I think that would be kind of the purest way of funding it for me. I've always thought that, you know, things like Buffy and Firefly, it's a real shame they got cancelled because of, you know, the evil fox. But you know, if you could get people paying for them directly, then that could be interesting. But as a sponsorship thing, that's really interesting for brands. People always want Perplex City to feature Coca-Cola or Nokia or whatever. So if we can get them money, that's nice. Cool. Well, thank you.